All right, we were talking about gender before my tooth got uncontrollable, but I hope I got it back in. All right, thank you, dental glue. So we were talking about the fact that gender is in many ways biological. Men are different from women in a lot of ways. I know it's shocking. Men are different from women. And part of that, of course, triggers differences like hormones. And remember the point of this chapter. These are factors that are influencing you, that are changing the way you behave, and we're maybe not even aware of them, okay? But many of these factors, cultural factors in particular, can be challenged. Well, what does it mean to be gender? We talked about the nature of gender, XXXY, and the hormones that they create. But what about the nurture? Where does it come from? Some people believe that, our gender roles are just so culturally based. We teach our children, like here, I'm going backwards. Social learning theory. We learn social behavior by observing and imitating and being rewarded and punished. That is to say, we learn what it is to be a boy and a girl by, keep it simple, you have a little baby boy, and your little baby boy picks up a Barbie doll, and you smack it out of that kid's hand, and you go, "What are you thinking?" Or your daughter does something like makes a bed for a dolly, and you go, "Oh, that's so cute." And you, the parent, are providing rewards and punishments for the appropriate social behaviors, and therefore it's all culturally based, it's all made up, that there really is no difference between being a male and a female. There is. Very interesting side note. They took some rhesus monkeys, and they took these baby rhesus monkeys, they were like 6 months old, and they put them in a room with toys. Some of the rhesus monkeys were boys and some were girls. Put them in a room full of toys. There were some traditionally boy toys like trucks and some real traditional girl toys like dolls and stuffed animals. And lo and behold, the boys were a little bit more, they played with both trucks and dolls, that's us boys. The girls, they didn't touch the trucks. They couldn't care less, okay? These female rhesus monkeys that had never watched a Nickelodeon commercial which told them, oh, by the way, maybe you don't have kids. All of the commercials on Nickelodeon are for toys, and all of these toys are either boys' toys and girls' toys, and they definitely show you who's playing with those toys, all right? They let you know what's right and what's wrong. These monkeys have never had, a mother reward them for cuddling. I mean, it hasn't happened, and yet that's what they did, okay? It popped out in a monkey. There's a truth to it, okay? Gender schema theory is kind of a broader notion that says that, a schema is sort of like a mental representation of what something is supposed to look like. Say from cognitive psychology, you might have a schema of a restaurant, a schema, close your eyes and think of a restaurant. And if you go to cheap restaurants like me, you get, imagine ketchup on the table or something, and you have this idea of what a restaurant is supposed to look like. And so if you walk into some place that looks radically different and they go, "This is a restaurant," and you're like, "That's not right. It just doesn't fit my idea of what a restaurant is supposed to be." Well, in the same way that you have this internal representation of what a restaurant is supposed to be, you have an internal representation of what being a man is supposed to be, being a woman is supposed to be. And of course, your internal representation is the result of the culture you grew up in, the house you grew up in, okay? Or the part of the country you grew up in. Hint, hint, this is Texas, all right? So, all right, ballet, neat, okay. And by the way, I hate to say it, but I do the same thing. When my daughter, she puts together this cuddly little beds for her dollies, and they're spread all over my room, and it's so cute, and "Oh, you're so cute." I provide those too. All right, we all do. Trust me on this. But again, these rules change, okay? Look at this. This is a percentage of people that agree the activities of married women are best confined to home and family. And so you find that in the 1967, the majority of men thought that was correct, and half the women felt it too. And then along came the late 60s. We have the women's rights movement, or no, women's rights, women's lib. That's the one I'm thinking about. Women's lib. Burn them bras, I am woman, hear me roar, right? That whole deal. You all remember that one, right? Boom, boom, boom. But then it's been fairly steady after that, with men being slightly more, but still a good chunk of women agreeing with that statement. The point is that what does it mean to be a man? Changes with time. What does it mean to be a woman? Changes with time. Here's a similar kind of thing. What kind of marriage do you think is a more satisfying way of life? And in America, about 58% of people felt the best kind of a marriage is one where both work. Whereas in Canada, and 37% felt it's best to live in a house where the husband provides and the wife stays home. We find other countries are more egalitarian than us, like Egypt, for goodness sake. Egypt is more egalitarian. No, less egalitarian. Egypt is much less egalitarian. But if you go to a country like France, yeah, of course, they're awesome. French aren't awesome. Wait a minute, unless you are French, and they are. No, we find that places which surprise me is like Vietnam is very egalitarian. China is very egalitarian, and I'm very surprised because of how traditional these cultures are, even more so than in the United States. But the point is, what does it mean to be a man changes with time? What does it mean to be a man changes with place? Okay? And the expectations that go with it. And therefore, being a man influences our social behaviors in different ways at different times and in different places. But I like this one. It's not really related to anything, but I found it one time and I can't let it go because it's so fun. Scientists recently discovered a new species of worm. This is a worm. It lives in the ocean. It lives in a very, very, very specific place. It lives on the bones of dead whales. Now, these scientists found these worms, and they were having a problem. They couldn't figure it out because they were all female. They're like, well, where's the male? I don't get it. I can't find any. Eventually, they found the male. The males were inside the female as a little Rice Krispie looking thing there, right? A little Rice Krispie thing inside the woman there, and they were nothing but a sperm sac. Okay? And it goes like this. When a new worm is born, it floats down, down, down. If it lands on top of a whalebone, it develops into a woman. But if it floats down and lands on top of a worm that's already there, which by definition will be a woman, it then is absorbed into the body of that worm and develops into a male. So it's a really interesting quirk of fate. Like, is it nature? Is it nurture? And we think about, XXXY and, being a boy means. But look at that. The environment completely determines whether or not they become a male or a female. It has got nothing to do with genetics. Genetics are unrelated to whether or not these worms become male and female. It's just such a cool little trick on nature versus nurture. Clearly, genders differ in other ways. Look at this. Women are better at empathy, in case you haven't figured that out. When people need help, when they need assistance, when they're going through trouble, they rarely go to men for emotional support. It isn't. Even men go to women for emotional support. All right, it's just how it works. I love this. Girls play in small groups and imitate relationships. Boys play in. It's just crazy how aggressive the boys are. I don't know how they learn it, but they do. As we had already said, people universally rate men as more dominant, driven, and aggressive. In fact, here, men are half of all jury members, as they should be, because they pull the jury pool from the driving licenses and stuff. But 90% of the jury leaders. Okay, to this day, men still usually ask out women on the first date. I know I did. Okay, I would have never married my wife if I hadn't asked her first. So, keeping it simple. Oh yeah, I got to remember this. Okay, keeping it simple now. We talk about these things that are, influencing us, and do we have free will? No, because we have these other things that are influencing us, our culture, our biology, our gender. However, a given social situation affects each person differently, but even more so, people often choose their own situations, okay? If a boy is good at math in second grade and gets rewarded by his teacher, that boy will come to value math more. And that boy will then choose situations where math is perhaps required. We'll pick up different puzzle books or something. And what will that do? That will create the situation of better math in him. So we find that, there can be biological... If two organisms are born the same, with one tiny difference, very quickly these two organisms can develop into radically different things. All right? Biology and culture, but we interpret, whatever, okay? We choose our situations, we create our situations, etc. Oh, I love epigenetics. Oh, I could go on and on and on, but I won't go on and on and on. But I love epigenetics. It is the coolest thing in the world because traditional genetics does not allow for rapid change of organism. Traditional genetics can't explain an awful lot of evolutionary theory because so much of biological evolution is occurring. Well, like I said, cultural evolution occurs much faster than biological evolution. Well, epigenetics is sort of a corollary to genetics, little switches on the top of the genetics. It can be switched on and switched off rapidly, and it can allow for major changes in a species within a generation. It's a very cool thing. I mean, it's very cool. I got to leave it there. Yeah, okay. Read this one. This is so cool. You ought to look this study up. Marcus Pembry and his colleague, whatever. Look it up. I'm going to stop there and call this, oh, here, these are definitely culturally based. I don't know what the point is. Okay. I'm going to stop there and we'll come back and we'll talk about conformity and get a chance to talk about short paper number 3 assignment in the next chapter. All right? Boom.